You didn't say anything. Not because nothing happened. Because everything happened. You felt it the moment it hit. The exact second the word was said. Or the word wasn't said. Or they looked at you. Just slightly wrong. In a way that most people wouldn't even notice, but you noticed because you always notice, and it landed somewhere that you don't have language for yet. And instead of saying something, you got quieter. Shorter sentences, slightly different posture, still present, still functioning, still responding when spoken to. But somewhere behind your eyes, you were already gone. And the most painful part wasn't what they said. It was that they kept talking, kept moving through the room, kept existing completely normally while you were sitting there quietly coming apart, and they had no idea. You've been doing this your whole life, going quiet instead of saying it, pulling inward instead of reaching out. And you've probably spent years wondering if something is wrong with you. Nothing is wrong with you, but something is happening every time you go quiet that is more specific, more precise, more psychologically exact than anything anyone has ever explained to you. Tonight, that changes. Most people think going quiet when hurt means you can't communicate, that you're avoidant, passive, emotionally unavailable. The people who say that are usually the ones who have never felt something so precisely that they couldn't find words large enough to hold it. Because here is what's actually true. The people who go quiet when hurt are almost never the ones with nothing to say. They are the ones with too much to say, in a moment that feels too unsafe to say any of it in. The silence is not absence. It is the most crowded place in the entire interaction, packed with everything that didn't feel safe enough to become words. Tonight, 4 things that happen inside a person the moment they go quiet, not to justify it, not to fix it, to finally name it. The moment something hurts you, a signal fires, not in your mind, in your body. The amygdala, the part of the brain responsible for processing threat, does not distinguish between physical danger and emotional pain. To the nervous system, rejection feels like impact. Dismissal feels like threat. The wrong tone from someone you love registers in the same neural territory as something physically harmful. And when the body detects threat, it does what it always does. It conserves, it redirects resources, it shuts down non-essential output. Speaking in that moment is non-essential output. The body isn't being strategic, it isn't being passive-aggressive. It is running a survival protocol designed for physical emergencies that activates just as automatically in emotional ones. The words didn't come, not because you didn't have them, but because the system that converts feeling into language was already occupied, managing something it classified as more urgent. You didn't go quiet. Your body went quiet and took you with it before you had the chance to decide anything at all, which means the silence was never a choice. It was a response, as automatic as pulling your hand back from something hot. The question isn't why you went quiet. The question is, what did your body just classify as dangerous enough to shut everything down for? Here's where it gets more specific. The silence isn't only biology, it's memory. At some point, you tried to say it. You told someone you were hurt. You found the words, despite how hard that was, and you said them, and something went wrong. Maybe they got defensive. Maybe they minimized it. You're too sensitive. I didn't mean it like that. Why do you always do this? Maybe they apologized, in a tone that made it clear. The apology was about ending the conversation, not about what happened. Maybe they just looked at you, in a way that made you feel smaller for having said anything. And your mind, which is extraordinarily good at learning from experience, took notes. So now, when the hurt arrives, before you've consciously decided anything, the mind runs a fast, silent calculation. It checks the historical record, it reviews previous attempts. It runs the likely outcome, based on everything it has stored about what happens when you speak in moments like this. And if the record shows that speaking costs more than it returns, the mouth closes. Not out of weakness, out of accuracy. The silence is the conclusion of a risk assessment that your mind completes in less than a second based on years of data that you lived through and never forgot. You're not being passive, you're being precise about what has happened before. When you trusted That's saying it, there is a layer beneath the biology, beneath the memory that is harder to name, but it might be the most important one. Right now, while the feeling stays inside you, you can still function. You can sit in the same room, respond when spoken to, maintain the surface of someone who is okay. But here is what happens. The moment you say it out loud, it becomes real in a different way. Not more real than what you're feeling. That's already real. Real in the most private, precise sense that something felt and not spoken can be, but spoken real. Visible real, the kind of real that the other person now has access to. And the moment they have access to it, they have the power to respond in a way that makes it worse. To say the wrong thing, in the right words but the wrong tone. To look at you with an expression that tells you they don't fully understand what you just handed them. And if that happens, it doesn't just hurt. It confirms something you've been afraid of for a long time. That what you feel is not something other people can actually hold. So the silence becomes a form of protection, not of them, of the feeling itself. Keeping it inside keeps it intact, whole, undiluted by a response that wasn't adequate to what it actually was. You are not hiding. You are protecting something real from the risk. And then there is this, the part that is the hardest to admit, even to yourself. Sometimes silence is a question, not calculated, not manipulative. Just a quiet, barely conscious hope that if you go still enough, if the shift is visible enough in your posture, in your shorter answers, in the particular quality of the quiet, that only happens when something is wrong, they will notice without being told. Because here is what asking directly cannot give you. When you say you hurt me and they respond with care, you can never fully know if they would have arrived there on their own. But when someone notices the quiet and walks toward it, unprompted, without being asked, that tells you something that no direct request ever could. It tells you they were paying attention when it wasn't required. It tells you you are visible to them, even in the moments you're trying not to take up space. It tells you you matter enough to be noticed when you go missing, even while still in the room. And when they don't notice, when they move through the space, completely undisturbed by the silence that is saying everything, the hurt doesn't just stay, it expands. Because now there are two wounds: the thing that happened, and the confirmation that you are not as seen as you needed to be by someone you needed to see you. You go quiet because your body made a decision faster than your mind could intervene. You go quiet because memory told you what speaking costs, and you decided you couldn't afford it right now. You go quiet because some things feel too real to risk in a response that might not be able to hold them. And you go quiet because some part of you still believes in the person who notices without needing to be told. None of this is broken. None of this is something to fix. It is a person who feels things at a depth that most social interactions were never designed to reach, who learned through real experience that speaking doesn't always lead to being understood, and who found in the silence the one place where the feeling could exist completely without being mishandled. The silence was never nothing, it was everything. Held so carefully by someone who has spent a long time waiting for a place where it would finally be safe to put it down.